And I never really appreciated, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the other martial arts fight scenes, including some of yours, until Hey guys, in today's video we got kickboxing martial arts legend Don the Dragon Wilson. We're going to talk about fight choreography in his films, give you some really behind the scenes stuff and some deep insight into this. And if you like this kind of content, make sure to help support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and sharing the video. Oh, by the way, if you want to smell amazing, check out Black Belt Fragrances. There's cologne and perfume, all information linked in the description below. Until the end of the year, by the way, it's only going to be $35 and they eat the shipping cost, and you're going to smell amazing at a discount. So anyway, let's get on to that discussion with Don the Dragon Wilson. Real quick, Don, like on a lot of your movies, because you've been in dozens of them, right? Did you ever feel like being on the lower budget films, like you didn't have enough time to film all the angles and the setups for the fights? Or did you feel like, no, we actually had enough time to shoot what we wanted?
No. There's never enough time. I've heard that Jackie Chan has spent 2 weeks on one fight.
Yeah, sure. That's what I'm talking about.
I might shoot a fight scene. I'd say average would be in and out of there in 45 minutes to maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours tops.
That's it?
Over. That's it. A couple of hours. What Art Camacho, who's my most used choreographer, probably used him like 20 something times.
Is he from the future?
What he does is he choreographs the fight scenes, shoots them on video, shows them to me. I give them the okay, and then they start rehearsing. And they have a guy playing me, and these guys are rehearsing off the set. They're just doing their own thing, okay. And I'm making the movie. Then they come in on the day of the event, and then I rehearse with them, and we run through it. Now, just think, let's say I've had 5 fight scenes average per movie. 30 movies, that's 150 fight scenes, right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So I'm pretty experienced, and I've spent hundreds of hours doing the choreography and things. And I'm a black belt, and I'm in pretty much control of my body. So fight scenes are not a difficult thing for me. The difficult thing is not hurting the other guy.
Sure.
Because when you want
to hurt
look
people,
great,
that's what you got paid for.
That's gotta hurt.
You gotta not hurt the other guy, not hit them. And so I take a lot of time and energy making sure. And if it looks like he leans forward too much before the punch, I just stop. I'd rather waste the time, waste the money, than hurt somebody. And knock on wood, I haven't hurt anybody, never hit anybody in the face or kicked anybody. But I've heard a lot of bad stuff about Van Damme and Seagal. And Hollywood is a small place in the martial art community because we use the same stunt guys. I've had a guy who had just finished his fight scene with Seagal, comes to my set, he's covered with bruises. And I go, what happened to you? And he goes, oh, well, Steven likes to use contact. I said, what do you mean contact? He said, well, I was supposed to do this move, and then he was supposed to do a block. And I said, and he said to me, he said, Steven is just hitting as hard as he can right in the arm. Now, that's abusive.
It is.
My fight scenes, yeah, he's hitting this guy in the same spot, 8 times, let's say, hard as he can. Stunt guy's got to do that. Next day, the guy or it wasn't the very next day, but like a week later, he shows up on my set. I'm looking at a black and blue arm. Looks like the guy got into a train wreck. And I asked him what happened, and he said Seagal did it to him. Now, here's what I do with the stuntman. Here's what I take pride in. I can make a fight scene by acting and by the skill level of my control of my body. It looks like a violent fight scene, and I never lay a glove. I never touch the guy. You could put a marshmallow in between my fist or my elbow or my knee, in between me and his body, and I never hit him hard enough to squeeze a marshmallow. That takes skill.
No, that does. That's a lot of control. Now here's
that when you're done at the end of the day, all the stunt guys don't have a mark on them.
Yeah, they probably love working with you. They
have said to me, they said,
but
reputation precedes itself. Because other guys say, hey, I never worked with the dragon. How is he when we fight? Is he going to really kick me? Is he going to? And they said, no, I take no pride if I make it look like a good kick and I blast the guy in the stomach. I mean, of course it's going to look like a good kick. Then any green belt could do it if I actually hit the guys. But I try to make it look violent. And you know, I don't do self-defense stuff because it's a movie. This is fake. I might finish with a jump spinning crescent kick. And there's only one reason to throw that in a fight scene is because it looks kind of flashy on film.
Sure.
You'd never do it for self-defense. You know, I'm like Bruce Lee. They asked Bruce Lee what was his most dangerous technique. And I don't know. I never met the guy. This is all hearsay. This is stuff I read. And Bruce Lee's answer was his finger jabs are his most dangerous technique. And his example was, your eyes are like grapes. And he just hits you in the eyes. He doesn't have to knock you out. He doesn't have to throw a leg kick. He doesn't have to hit you in the face with an elbow. Because how much of a danger are you going to be when you're blind?
You know, funny enough, even that technique, of all what was supposedly allowed in the Kumite, there were no eye gouging allowed.
No, we have a bunch of guys.
Allowed, like we
have a bunch of ex-martial artists, fighters bumping into the furniture all the time. You know what I mean? Oh, what's that guy? Oh, that guy must have fought in the Kumite. He bumped into the wall. No.
Here's an interesting question. Going back to like the fight choreography, because obviously film fighting is different than, you know, real fighting. And you even mentioned not doing your jump and
it's not realistic
ring. But did you adapt for film fighting? Because obviously you want to swing wide to cover the camera, whereas like obviously you got to do that in the ring.
Here's the thing. It's not a real fight. So you're right. When you're in a real fight, I tuck up like this and you throw. You don't want you to telegraph, and you don't want anybody to see the punch. But you have to go wide here. They have to see it. When it crosses the line of the guy's head, they have to see it on the other side. Because if it stops, you don't see, and the guy react. It doesn't look as big or as powerful. So yes, there's adaptation. But I'll say this about my fights. Jet Li was the guy who brought the wire work to America. If you remember early on, it was all wire work for Jet Li.
Sure.
And Jackie Chan brought all the comedy. He did martial arts, but he did comedy in between. Everybody's got their own kind of. Seagal did the throws. Remember, he was throwing guys left and right.
I'm just a cook.
I believe my key to the success of my movies and my fight scenes are more realistic. Like I would do this. The choreographer has a choreography. Let's say it's like 4 punches. But the punches are all unrelated. He just thought they all looked good, you know, you throw a back this and then come back and do a shuto to his neck and I said, no, let me just do this. Let me go. The most basic technique is two to the body, 1 to the head, 2 to the head, 1 to the body. Just 2 short shots in the body, the head, and then a big finisher would be the hook. So I would do the dramatic thing at the end of it, but it was a real combination. I said I never want to throw a technique on film that wouldn't have hurt the guy in real life. But Jackie Chan does all kinds of stuff that would never hurt anybody. You know, all kinds of like Wing Chun looking stuff. And they just put sound effects like that. And that's supposed to be, it hits the guy and then he goes down. Totally unrealistic and would not do any damage. But if you watch my fights, and you watch them, you'll see punches, kicks, elbows, knees, headbutts, throws, things that actually would do some damage. So I've added a little practicality. And I believe the other part of the key to the success of my films is people knew I was a real fighter. Mm-hmm. I knocked out. They may not know I had 48 knockouts, but I was knocking people out for real. So I had what Chuck Norris had whenever he did a fight scene, which Keanu Reeves and Jason Statham and even Michael J. White, they don't have that street cred because they don't have a bunch of people they knocked out. Mm-hmm. You know, if you see Tyson fighting, I think he did a fight scene with Donnie Yen. I never saw it, but I heard about it. You know, Donnie Yen's using Wing Chun, Tyson's using like boxing techniques. And I don't know if you know a lot about Wing Chun, but you know, I tell people Wing Chun works if you're in a phone booth. And you know what? Nowadays, there's not even a phone booth. Nobody knows what the hell that is.
That belongs in a museum.
So I mean, inside, it's a bunch of short stuff, direct stuff right to the guy's eyes and to his throat. And it doesn't look as powerful. One left hook of Mike Tyson, you don't have to explain to anybody what's going to happen. You know, so I think that probably was an interesting fight because of that very fact that they had 2 different styles. But everybody's got their own style, right? Seagal was throwing guys, and nobody was throwing them. Bruce Lee kind of mixed a little of everything. Bruce Lee, I also he had grappling because he submitted Sammo Hung in the opening scene of Enter the Dragon. You remember?
Yeah, no, that was cool. That was cool. And of course, Van Damme, that just balletic athleticism,
Yes.
beauty, the real beauty of the martial arts, right?
Slow motion. They do slow motion. He jumps up in the air. Man, I can't do anything like that. But that's
Not
like
a lot of
me
guys
saying,
that can.
it's like me saying I'm watching a gymnast do backflips and do. I can't do any of that. And Mike Tyson can't do any of that. But I tell you what, Mike Tyson can throw a right hand and knock you right out. And I can throw a side kick right to the gut and take all the air out of somebody and then tap them on the chin and knock them out. You don't necessarily have to be able to do all the flashy stuff that looks good on film. I mean, there's very little connection between real fighting and movie fighting. Very little. And I think I brought some to it. You know, I did some actual techniques that I used to use. You know
what's interesting, and I'll just give you the disclaimer. Like, I'm the biggest Van Damme fan, so for me, I know some people like Jet Li the most in those fights, or some people might like Steven Seagal, which I like a lot too, or Bruce Lee. But for me, it was always like the Van Damme. It's like the different angles of slow-mo, the balletic athleticism. And now, guys, you got real guys doing gymnastic kind of stuff, which I don't even really like that stuff, though it is kind of impressive in some ways.
Well, Mike Tyson can't do a backflip, but he can knock you right out. I mean,
yeah, it takes it out too much of
unrelated to fighting.
Real quick, Don, it kind of takes it too much out of like the fight for me. Like I could see somebody kind of doing the Van Damme stuff, but not the stuff that Scott Adkins is doing, this cartwheel sidekick. It's like that's a little too much where I'm kind of taken out of the fight. But here's why I bring this up. It is interesting what you said, where specifically we're trying to bring a little more realism because you are a real fighter. And I never really appreciated, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the other martial arts fight scenes, including some of yours, until I read a comment that somebody had posted a while ago, and they were talking about like your fight scenes in films, kind of explaining it the way you did, where you brought this more like realistic type style. And I was thinking like, that's interesting because, yeah, it's not like Don was trying to rip off Van Damme. And like you said, it's not like you're going to jump up and do the splits anyway, but you weren't even trying to copy somebody, as nobody should. You were trying to create something different that was your own. And it wasn't until I read that comment and realized, like, there might be like a level of genius to what he was doing in his movies back then, Yeah. So I can actually there more now than back then.
There definitely was. Jean-Claude Van Damme, he has many things that you could use the term are admirable qualities. Because something can be a key to your success, and that's not admirable because of the underlying purpose of it is selfish, or it's your own aggrandizement or whatever. But I'm just saying, he did things. He revived. Well, not even revived, because I don't believe it ever hit this peak before. But he was at the forefront of the revival of martial art action films.